Hey folks, it's your host Marlon Gardenera. You're listening to the Divided States of America show. Today, immigration, and a relatively simple question. What the hell are we doing? That and much more today on the Divided States of America show.
Welcome to the Divided States of America show, where your host, Marlon Gardenera, takes on the most divisive issues in our divided nation. We'll sort through the best and worst of politics and culture, asking questions and looking for answers that our two-ring, two-party circus has failed to provide. And here is your host, Marlon Gardenera.
Welcome back, folks. I appreciate you tuning in live. If you're catching the show on demand via YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, we appreciate you just the same. We're here weekdays, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Share it with friends, like our page, subscribe to YouTube, follow us on Twitter to stay up to date, and so we can let you know what's coming up next and when. Again, I'm grateful for all of you taking the time to listen to the show. We are getting better. Or at least we're having more fun. I don't know. Today is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Immigration. The question is even easier. What the hell are we doing? Now, a lot of you have answered that differently. Really, your answers have been so varied, so confusing. It reflects why we have done nothing. We've had president after president who has failed to do anything appreciable, or more importantly, what we talk about here every day on this show. They failed to work together to come up with bipartisan solutions. And the reality is, at least according to the latest Pew Research, there's a consensus on much of what needs to be done at our border. There is actually already a majority of Americans who share very similar and very strong opinions. Certainly, if you go along party lines, some feel stronger, some feel less strength in the decisions that we could make. But there's enough crossover that if we actually wanted to get something done at the border, rather than just debate it, rather than just use it for talking points, rather than just use it for political points, we could. But we've taken a new tactic. One side has started distributing migrants. Now, what's interesting, though, when you listen to all of the reporting, they often say illegal immigrants. And I'm assuming if the immigrants were actually, in fact, illegal, they would be held by ICE, they would be held near borders, and in most cases be deported. I'm curious and try to keep an open mind to this concept. It appears to me that the people that are getting shipped all around this country from border states who believe that there are other places who are sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, and are encouraging people to cross our border illegally, are we actually sending people who are here illegally to those other states? I think the answer is actually no. But let's hear the story. It's everywhere. Couldn't miss it if you wanted to. Here's the latest reporting from CBS.
We're going to tell you about an escalation in the political fight over immigration. Dozens of apparent migrants landed by charter flight on a rocky island in the Atlantic, Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, yesterday afternoon. They arrived as part of what Governor Ron DeSantis calls a relocation program. Many did not know where they were going, and local officials on the island were not given any advance notice of the flight's arrival. Nick Giovanni of our Boston station WBZ is in Woods Hole, that's just across the water from Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. Nick, good morning.
Tony, good morning to you. This is one of the terminals here on Cape Cod that takes passengers to Martha's Vineyard. And it is there this morning where those migrants are waking up in at least two shelters that we know of following an island-wide response to their arrival. Volunteers on Martha's Vineyard found themselves scrambling to find shelter, food, water, and other services to accommodate the unforeseen arrival of 50 migrants, including the elderly and children, flown there as part of a relocation plan originated by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Martha's Vineyard Community Services has 50 people sort of literally walk up to their front door.
Witnesses say the group wandered some 3 miles from the airport into Edgartown. Once in town, the migrants were met by volunteers who brought them to a high school where they were fed and later transported by school bus to a church to stay for the night. Authorities sent out urgent pleas on social media asking for volunteers to help with an urgent humanitarian situation. Barbara Rush worked into the night helping the families at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church.
From what we found out by talking to people there, originally from Venezuela, they were flown here. We're not sure what plane brought them here, how they got on the plane to here.
Volunteers said they were told by some of the migrants they did not know where they were, or were told they would be given housing and jobs. A statement from a DeSantis spokesperson read in part, Massachusetts, New York, and California will better facilitate the care of these individuals who they have invited into our country by incentivizing illegal immigration through their designation as sanctuary states. Since the spring, Republican governors in Texas and Arizona have transported several thousand migrants and asylum seekers to New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., all cities with Democratic mayors. Yet, unlike those major cities, these arrivals aren't met with migrant resources and services like immigration courts where their asylum cases can be heard.
Immigrants who were told that they would be greeted here with a place to stay and with jobs.
Massachusetts State Representative Fernandez arrived on the island Wednesday and called the move by the DeSantis government to transport migrants there with seemingly no coordination, quote, evil.
They're using children as political pawns. But the island community is really rallied together.
In addition to food and shelter, migrants were also tested for COVID and were all negative. As for Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who's also a Republican, his office told us the state will continue to support the short-term sheltering services provided to those migrants. Reporting from Woods Hole, Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Tony, back to you in New York.
Nick Giovanni for us from WBZ, their partners in Massachusetts. A story unlike any I'm sure you or your station's ever covered. Thank you very much. This has not happened in this way before. There's been a crisis at the border for multiple decades. Congress, multiple presidents have not solved that crisis. There's been busing to Chicago, to D.C., New York. The difference here is that Martha's Vineyard is a tiny island of 15,000 people without an ice port, without infrastructure that can handle an influx like this, without social services in place, let alone late notice. Yeah, late notice.
No notice.
So it's just, ultimately they're probably going to end up in Boston. But it's a change. That's why we call it escalation off the top. They shift in strategy.
I thought the word humane was a good one to use in this case. People don't know where they're going. The people that are there don't know you're coming. It's good to see that they're being welcomed and that people are trying to help them. But you're right. Exactly. I've been to Martha's Vineyard many times. It's a great place. But at least give people some notice so they can prepare.
Part of this best known for the Jaws. At the end of the story, it's going to continue. Sure.
I hope it continues. Here's the reality. First, Martha's Vineyard. I think that location was selected for a reason. It is beautiful. It is prestigious. It is a vacationer's dream. I've never been to Martha's Vineyard. I've been to a place very close by called Block Island, which has its own set of memories and meaning and purpose for me. But I understand, and has paid attention to some of the great places in America. Martha's Vineyard is one of them. It wasn't selected for its immigration courts. It wasn't selected for its ability for asylum seekers to check in and follow the process. It's a place that comes with a message. It's primarily a political message for supporters of the states, or in this case, Ron DeSantis, who sent them there via plane. I believe they allocated about $12 million to continue this relocation process. It's political. Listen, politicians do political things. I'm not here to debate that. We already know that part is true. Martha's Vineyard is probably doing what real patriots, real Americans do when people are in need. They figured out a way to house and feed, shelter people they were not expecting, people who, as reported, didn't even know they were going there, people who weren't set up to receive them. And you know what I think Martha's Vineyard is going to do? I think Martha's Vineyard is going to set an example for all Americans, and that example will serve as a symbol that Martha's Vineyard and the residents there recognize the asylum seekers as people, as humans. I would imagine they're going to step up, and I would imagine they're going to do their very best. And I would imagine, like was already reported, churches are going to open their doors. Volunteers are going to come from everywhere to make sure that those 50 people feel welcome and are taken care of. The divide in America right now is that those people are political pawns, which, again, I'm not complaining about the political nature of it. That's what politicians do. That's what we allow our leadership to do. That's what we allow the integrity of our leadership to do. So I'm not debating whether or not this is a political move. Of course it is. It's also practical. Maybe they think in the states where they're getting rid of people, if you spend $12 million to get them out of there, they may be thinking that it'll cost them a lot more than $12 million to allow them to stay there. So I'm not getting into that yet, if I'm going to get into it. I can't wait to hear the reports of the great things that people in Martha's Vineyard do for other human beings. I can't wait till the story that is told is a community coming together and being good to other human beings. I hope Martha's Vineyard shines brightly in this experience, and I hope it's a great reminder that seeking asylum in America is in our Constitution. It's also something we've agreed to in international treaties. It is not illegal. Let me repeat that. As many of the governors of the states, specifically Florida, Texas, and Arizona, have pointed out, they are the ones sending them to other places, sharing what they call the burden of those people. Okay, share it. DeSantis and his statement was very clear that he wants to send people to the places where they appear to be encouraging people to immigrate illegally. So I guess I have to ask this question. Are the people, the 50 Venezuelans sent to Martha's Vineyard, illegal immigrants? Or are they people seeking asylum? Because if you're seeking asylum, you're not an illegal immigrant. You're someone that's following the words of our Constitution and international treaties. You are coming here and you are stating your case for why wherever you left and whatever was happening to you was so bad that America should consider asylum for you. Now, we will not debate whether or not the asylum system is working. I'm just going to stipulate, let's act like we're in court. It doesn't. The amount of time it takes to investigate, figure out, determine, make a decision, and allow people to either be here or deport them back, it takes too long. The system is flawed. It's broken. I first one to stipulate that the way we do it doesn't make sense. Trump tried something new. He said, if you want to seek asylum in our country, request it. File the paperwork. Go through the steps, but you can't be here when you do it. Now, if I remember correctly, the basis of that was health concerns related to COVID. It wasn't the following of the Constitution, which allows people to come here to seek asylum. It was a public health emergency and a method of protecting Americans from people who may not be using the same protocols we were using to fail at COVID, which is what we did in our country anyway. But it was the excuse used. I don't care. That's politics. That's how politicians think to get things done. But the Remain in Mexico plan isn't something that the Biden administration wants to do for asylum seekers. Please make the distinction. Please be honest when we're talking about the difference between asylum seekers and illegal immigrants. An illegal immigrant is someone who comes up and is not looking to go through the process. They're not looking to do the paperwork. They're not looking for court hearings. They're not presenting themselves at the border and seeking what is rightfully offered by our country to people who think they need asylum. People who seek asylum are rejected. They are returned to their original country. They are denied entry into America. But I'll say it again, the system for asylum is broken. Trump's policy of Remain in Mexico related to public health wasn't a solution. It didn't change the Constitution or international treaty. It certainly didn't change the circumstances and the humanitarian nature of how people existed while they remained in Mexico, who also at the time wasn't set up to deal with that. So what we did as Americans is we sent a bunch of money there. Our government sent money to Mexico to do a better job at carrying out our asylum policies. But again, I'm not even here to argue about Remain in Mexico. But if our Constitution says it's something you can do, I would imagine we would do it humanely. So the money our government sent to Mexico was much needed. The Biden administration has a different opinion about it, a different feeling about it. Obviously, our courts are and will continue to weigh in on that subject. But the reality is they're human beings following a constitutional process in America. When we call them illegal immigrants and or say that we're shipping illegal immigrants around the country, I would imagine that would be aiding and abetting a crime if, in fact, the people they were putting on buses and planes were illegal. And if that's the case, if we are the country of law and order, and one of those laws and orders is that you don't want people to be able to cross the border illegally, I would imagine you would take issue with anybody who would put them on a bus or a plane if we know they're here illegally and send them somewhere else. I don't really believe that that's what's happening. I think what's actually happening is asylum seekers are being sent to other places because they otherwise would start the process, start the investigation, be set free into America, given some opportunity because they are allowed to be here while they go through the asylum process. And what Texas, Florida, and Arizona are saying is not here, not on our dime, not with our law enforcement, not with our education, not with all of the things we have to pay for. Fine. Okay. If there are places that want to be sanctuary places, if there are people who want to be more empathetic or sympathetic to the people who are coming across this country's borders seeking asylum, the legal constitutional right they have to do that, okay. Where I take issue is the inhumane part of sending people to a place they don't know, not telling the people there that they're coming, which I get it. They don't get to experience the heads up that people are coming across the border seeking asylum. They don't probably get an official or appropriate or well-funded heads up about people entering their states. So they think, hey, turnabout is fair play. But I'm guessing if they could get the funding that they needed to help people seeking the lawful right to asylum, and they got a heads up, and they were better prepared, it would be less of a crisis in those places. Now, if we're failing to do that, we're not funding Texas, Florida, Arizona for the costs incurred for taking on the federal government's responsibility for the asylum process. I stand with you, Texas, Florida, and Arizona, not with randomly sending people to places they don't know they're going and not telling anybody that's there. I stand with you in the fight to make sure that the process works right where you are, because it should be made right. You shouldn't have to bear the responsibility of our country's policy solely on your border states. We agree. This is a divided nation, but getting the resources necessary to help humans shouldn't be something we're divided over. So I agree with Arizona, Texas, Florida. Make sure the federal government is giving them the resources while people go through a broken asylum system that doesn't appear to be getting fixed. And if they're having problems with funding and resources to make sure the states are in better position to take care of those people, we should be fighting to make sure that that happens for those states as well. That's not a Republican or Democratic thing. That's not a left or right thing. The fact that we make it one is where it starts to get absurd and the productivity disappears. We're not productive. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we have an asylum process that's so broken. It's embarrassing that we may not be giving the states the resources they need to take care of people when they enter there lawfully and legally through our asylum system. So again, I'm not even debating that they think, hey, I want to lessen this burden. Maybe we don't get the resources. Maybe we don't get the heads up. Let's spread the price of allowing asylum seeking in our Constitution. Political reasons, political points, stirring up your base, making people proud is why you would do it. And I don't want to say in the cover of darkness, because now I'm starting to be a little conspiratorial. But to fly them to a place that they have no immigration services, none. Martha's Vineyard doesn't have immigration courts. Martha's Vineyard is not prepared to be able to check in prior to their court dates. There's a list of things that Martha Vineyard's not prepared to do. So again, that was political symbolism to send it to a place that isn't prepared, don't know they're coming, don't have any resources for them. The people didn't know they were going there. There's a list of things wrong with that. They are actually recreating what is being done to them, which I don't know from a leadership perspective. Hey, they're doing it to me, so I'm going to do it to you. Doesn't exactly sound like leadership. If they're having a hard time, again, getting the funding they need to support people who are seeking asylum in their states, I will happily, particularly when we build this platform to a large enough group, a large enough audience, stand with them in that fight to make sure that their states are not losing while the federal government goes through its broken process. I'm with you. But Here's where we get back to the divided states of America. Here's where we get back to the regular focal point of the show. Tell me which administration solved these problems. Tell me who initiated the bipartisan talks to match the consensus that we have on several issues as it relates to our border security, illegal immigration, and asylum seeking. Tell me when that's been accomplished, because each side likes to watch the other side fail in effort to make themselves look better. And I don't know how failure on humans makes either political side actually better. It just makes both failures at solving an issue for Americans. If the states that are taking on the most people aren't getting the money to do it, we failed. If those states think, I hate this, this is horrible, let's do it to somebody else, they failed. The people who don't know where they're going and don't have any services when they get there, I guess they're caught up in the fact that our Constitution allows for asylum, treaties allow for asylum, but our people are playing games with them. And by people, I mean anybody denying them the funds in the states that they land, and anybody sending them to other states without notice, without making sure that people know where they're going, or thinking that there might be any services for them when they get there. There's no collaboration to be better Americans, better people, better humans to people seeking asylum. Because here's a news flash that I think we're all losing out on. Some of the people seeking asylum need it. Some of the people seeking asylum are coming from horrendous scenarios, and we can help. I think it's our Statue of Liberty. It says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Guessing in some of the places people are trying to get rid of or leave, there's no freedom. There's persecution for homosexuality. There's persecution for religious beliefs. There's persecution of women. There's persecution for not succumbing to gangs and extortion. There's a list of things that people are trying to escape, many of them willing to risk their lives to escape it. Of course, if I'm trying to get out of a bad situation, I too would be going to the place I thought best. America is that beacon, is that place. We do have a process. When you come here to go through the asylum process, you're just going through the asylum process. Incentivize people? Hey, listen. Is there an incentive to come to America versus where you are? Yeah, we don't have to do anything for that. That exists solely by the way we live in America, by the standards we live, by the care we try to give. We fall short, but it's always better than the places these people are coming from. And the asylum seeking process, I would imagine, does some vetting early enough on that we're not primarily concerned about the people seeking asylum having backpacks full of drugs. My understanding is they come through trucks that we don't check every single day across a border 20 miles from me. I'm pretty sure the asylum seekers go through enough vetting for us to know Osama bin Laden wasn't walking across the border saying, I am being oppressed in my native country. If I'm wrong, we've got more things to fix. But I don't mind saying in our divided nation, in these divided states of America, we aren't working together to actually solve any of those problems. We're not doing anything to solve those problems. So when we take the next step and it becomes a humanitarian issue, when we start dropping people off, no warning, no shelter, no food, I mean, do I really even have to describe that? The mayor of Chicago said it was just racist. Just flat out racist. I've seen some Twitter chat. Bet you there's not a lot of Ukrainians getting shipped to places with no notice. Bet you we're working that out as people are seeking asylum in war-torn countries. Don't get me wrong, doesn't have to be a declaration of war by the government of Venezuela and some of the South and Central American countries where they have challenges that people commonly come here to get away from. Not suggesting racism. I'm just asking the question, are we treating Ukrainians the same when they come seeking asylum? Are we putting them on buses and airplanes and dropping them in the most awkward places with no resources to make political points? Or are we treating them better? I haven't been shy about my displeasure, my distrust, my discomfort with the way we've talked about the human beings trying to come to America. Today, I'm particularly talking about asylum seekers because I have to imagine again that the Texas governor, the Arizona governor, the Florida governor, they're not sending illegal immigrants deeper into America. That would be aiding and abetting illegal immigrants. There's a process for them that one would hope would include more deportation. I think they're sending asylum seekers who are legally here, but they keep calling them in their press conferences and their statements illegal immigrants. At least be truthful about who it is, why they're here, and where you're sending them. Be decent. Politics isn't bigger than humans. Don't get me wrong. Yes, it is to a lot of people, but it certainly shouldn't be. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. How far have we gone from who we're supposed to be? Already acknowledged, if the federal government isn't doing their job and supporting the states that are receiving asylum seekers, we ought to all be united to make sure that that changes. States shouldn't have to carry a federal burden for a federal process that has failed. But I can ask which party, which side, which president, which bipartisan group of people solved that problem and made the asylum process better. It didn't get better because people were being held in Mexico. It didn't get better from a humanitarian standpoint. It didn't get better upholding our Constitution. And we can have the political difference whether a person should be there or they should be here when they do it. And I get the idea that some people think they should be there. But again, I'm sure there's some vetting done. They're not walking across with backpacks full of drugs. And Osama bin Laden wasn't going to seek asylum and get it at the border. And if he is, again, that would speak to a failed system that we as a nation, as a government, as the politicians who like to jump on these opportunities aren't saying and doing anything to make those things better. So this image that we see here is just the current reality at our border. Now here's the weird part. Americans actually agree a little bit more on our border than you think. Pew researchers come out and they say Republicans and Democrats have different priorities for U.S. immigration policy. And while their priorities may be different, the reality of the support for the different things that we could be doing to make the situation better at our border for actual illegal immigrants versus asylum seekers, there's so much in common that if we actually wanted to get something done, if we weren't divided for divided's sake, if we weren't divided for partisan politics, and we were actually doing something or trying to be productive for people, we might actually get a different outcome. According to that Pew research, Republicans and Democrats differ on the most pressing priorities for the nation's immigration systems. Republicans place particular importance on border security and deportation of immigrants who are in the country illegally, while Democrats place greater importance on past the legal status for those who entered the country illegally, especially those who entered as children, according to a new Pew research study. Pew survey, excuse me. We know that already. Majority of Americans view increased border security, legal status for children brought to the U.S. as important immigration policies. When I say that, I want you to know that a majority of Americans agree that both increased border security and legal status for children brought to the U.S. illegally are important immigration policy goals. It is probably the easiest, most basic, most clear example of there being a consensus, there being a majority in America of people who believe what both sides use separately as their rallying cry to get political favor with their potential supporters. Say it again. There is a majority on the two biggest issues, according to the Pew Research Center, from the left and the right. There is a majority consensus on both issues. Do you think it's going to be presented like that from either party over the next, 54 days before we get to the midterm? Do you think it's going to be presented like that over the 54 days plus 2 years before we get to the general election, where Biden will be up for re-election and Congress will turn over again and more senators will be up for re-election? Do you think that will be the central focus? Hey, folks, we actually agree. Let's get something done in the areas where we agree. We all want more border security. No, it's more fun to say Biden wants an open border. Democrats want an open border. Liberals want an open border. I don't know any who actually believe that. That's a political talking point meant to gain favor with people who don't want that, so that they believe that you are fighting for their causes when in fact they're lying and they're not doing anything to actually solve the problem. Democrats, we want the children brought over here illegally to have a pathway to citizenship. It is just purely humanitarian BS. I think they believe many of those people will end up being Democrats long term. They also want to be solving problems in a community that is growing in population throughout our country, a community that, at least in my state, California, at some point will be the majority. So trying to gain favor. There's a political road or aspect or component for the left too. But what they both forget is they both want the same thing. Both want better border security. Both, when you take the aggregate and look at the majority of Americans, want legal status for children brought to the U.S., no doing of their own. DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals. You're telling me a 2-year-old who's had to apply, not break any laws, be a productive citizen, should be deported to a country they've never known, never maybe been to, speaking languages they don't know? Come on. America, we're better than that. Or at least we're supposed to be. So when we talk about the divide, it's a result of our leadership and us stepping out of the policy of just being better people. Where we have consensus, we should use it. Where we have consensus, we should be able to get things done. Where we have consensus, we shouldn't be listening to a political fight that reflects the absence of consensus when we actually have it. As the number of people apprehended for illegal crossings at the southern border has reached record annual levels, about 3/4 of Americans say increasing security along the U.S.-Mexico border to reduce illegal crossings would be, 44% said very, and 29% said very important goals of U.S. immigration policy. Come on, 73% of people agree on the same thing, but yet we can't get anything done on it. Blows my mind. It blows my mind. Majorities of Americans also say taking civilian refugees from countries where people are trying to escape violence and war. 72% said allowing immigrants who came to the country illegally as children to remain in the U.S. apply for legal status. 72% should be an important goal for immigration policy. I think I said it probably on the first episode, or at least the summary of what I thought this show could be about. Even when Americans agree, our political leaders don't get the job done. Even when we agree, we fail. We know when we don't agree, COVID, we failed. A million people died, much more than many wars. We didn't take it on as a common opponent. We didn't have a national strategy. It was 50 different states. It was left and right. We failed. We failed. On immigration, if you believe there's a crisis, why continue to fail on policies where we have consensus? One of which would be to make the border more secure. The other of which would be to stop holding children who were brought here when they were 2, applied, followed our laws, gone through the process. Why keep denying them? Goes on. About 2/3, 66% of the public wants an immigration system to make it easier for U.S. citizens and legal residents to sponsor family members to migrate to the U.S. 6 in 10 think we should be establishing a way for most immigrants currently in the country illegally to stay legally. 6 in 10, 60%. We have consensus on enough issues in this debate that we should already be working on these issues. Even 59% of Democrats believe border security should be at least somewhat important. 59% of Democrats believe border security should be important. Our failures are our own, folks. Has very little to do with our politicians. Has very little to do with our leadership. Okay, I take that back. Our leaders are absolutely failing. Our leadership is actually not leading. Our leadership is not getting things done where we clearly want things done. They would rather use it to maintain their position, garner, grab more power than to address the issues Americans need addressed. If you're sitting back and I asked, as it relates to immigration policy, what the hell are we doing? And you're screaming, we got to secure the border. 72% or 73% agree. Done. Democrats are screaming, we can't be holding these children responsible for what their parents did. This is terrible. They're legal citizens. They've gone to our schools. They followed the process. They have jobs. They can't commit crimes. If they commit crimes, they make themselves ineligible. They're productive citizens. They're exactly what we want Americans to be. Get them out of here. No. 72% of Americans believe that we should have a pathway for them to stay. The illegals that are here, and I'll just touch on that again briefly. I've mentioned it before. 6 in 10 people said we should find a way for them to be here legally. Can I repeat that? 60% of the people surveyed said we should find a way, both Democrats and Republicans, we should find a way for those people to gain legal status and stay here legally. Yet, it's the biggest talking point we have. You know, if we did the things people said they wanted, we probably would be in a better situation. The border would be more secure. The children wouldn't be held responsible for what their parents are doing. And people who've been here 10, 20, 30 years, productive citizens in America, wouldn't be still in hiding, not paying taxes, working under the table, which then goes, believe me, into my major issue with our illegal immigration policy. But we're failing. We fail as people to make sure our leaders represent what we want, and what we want is also clear. Better border security, let the kids in, and 60% of us want to find a path for people who've already been here for years. It's our leadership and our standing back and listening to what the media reports on either side about how great our people are, even though we know the reality is we could solve some of these problems. This picture, I'm going to blow this one up. It's not funny. These are real lives. These are real people. It's amazing to me that that many people are on this side of the wall. So for those of you who say, finish Trump's wall, I got to tell you, living 20 miles from it, that wall doesn't stop people from coming across. So you can imagine the irony that I feel and I see when I look at this particular picture and know that those people are on the U.S. side of a big old wall. How'd they get here? How did they get here? Just examples of the irony and the silliness of how we go about doing things, or better yet, how we fail to go about taking care of immigration policy. You can't tell me the president that's got the job done. You can't tell me the party who has policy who has solved the problem. What you can describe to me are parties and people who, to gain more power, just address the parts that they like, not actually getting anything done, and ignore the parts that even their people like, that the other side would support, because power and partisanship is more important than the people in America, and certainly the dehumanized people who want to be here. Just my take. Now, I don't really want to go into illegal immigration as a whole, but I will ask this question, and this is serious. Feel free to go to the dsashow.com. You can jump in on the show. You come on air and you can answer this question. You can go to the comments. Question is simple. How does illegal border crossings affect you? Not your party, not your city, not your state, not your county. And I'm not discounting that it could have that effect on all of the above. I'm curious, how do those things affect you personally? I can't discount things I don't know about. I can't discount experiences and realities that I'm not familiar with. So I'm putting it out there as an open question to people. How does illegal border crossing affect you personally? I want your feedback. You can always email host@thedsashow.com, Facebook.com/The DSA Show. I'll be posting about this, and typically when we post, there's 300 or 400 comments. So I encourage you to do that. I have to put up that post first and make sure people see it. But how does illegal immigration affect you? How does a pathway to citizenship for the DACA recipients affect you? How would more border security, since we have a considerable consensus on it, affect you? Positively or negatively, because I would imagine there are people who don't want more border security. I just don't know exactly who that is. As our Border Patrol, ICE, they're still on the border. We still have enforcement. It may not be enough, but wouldn't the legislation of more funding and better solutions be a bipartisan thing, not something one party's going to get to the degree that they want it? Because, quite frankly, we don't get anything done. Real question, how does illegal immigration affect you? How does DACA affect you personally? How would you be affected if the 60% of the people here in America who believe that there should be a legal pathway for the people who are already here, been here for years, how does that affect you personally? What I believe we all get caught up in is the rhetoric from the media, the rhetoric from our politicians, and quite frankly, neither one of them are serving our interests. Now, the media can do a good job of exposing things and telling stories that we wouldn't know anything about and investing in the resources to do it, so I can't even begin to say that the media is all bad. It particularly gets bad when we start the bias part and the talking heads and the opinions, and when they're so closely aligned to the actual news that people start to believe that that's the actual news. But I'm just talking about this issue. What should we be doing as the actual people? I tell you what I'm doing. I'm trying to remind people they're human beings and they want a better life for their family. And what would you do to get a better life for your family? Would an imaginary line in the ground stop you from making sure your children eat tonight? And while I don't encourage people to break laws to make sure that their children eat, I could imagine that some people are going to do it with the incentive of America, not Joe Biden's policy, particularly today on the border, particularly as it relates to this or that. People want to come to America because they want to be here. And they might think that Biden's policies give them a better chance. But you can't tell me the president that did a better job stopped the illegal border crossing. The economy tends to do that more than any president. When there are no jobs, less people come. Just the reality. Drugs, they come from the trucks that bring our goods and services. We don't check everyone. We don't have the ability, the time, the commerce couldn't handle the delay it would take to search everything. They come right across the border every single day, despite our efforts. Terrorists, listen, I'm with you. So 72% of Americans, we want better border security, but we can't seem to get anything done. But as I ask, how does this affect you personally? Feel free to comment. Feel free to let us know, particularly on Facebook. Facebook.com/the DSA show, because there'll be hundreds of comments. I got to put it up. Give me a little time. How does this affect you? And don't get caught up in what some of our politicians have done, which is to dehumanize. I don't care if it's asylum seekers or illegal immigrants. They are still human beings. And here's the sad part in America. You can't tell between the two. You don't know the difference between an American citizen of Hispanic descent and an illegal immigrant of Hispanic descent. But the distinction that some are starting to make just based on the way they look reeks of how Americans deal with the us versus them mentality. So if you think the hatred that is often spread towards illegal immigrants doesn't seep into the lives of American citizens, you are lying to yourself. But a lot of people do that to make themselves feel better about what they believe and the people they believe and the parties they believe. And I'm just suggesting that the only way we'll get past this divide in America is if we start looking for the truth, and then we start listening to the truth, and then we get our politicians and leaders to do the same. Anything else is failure. Anything else allows the dehumanization of real people. And that is not what. I got to thank you for tuning in to today's Divided States of America show. You know I appreciate you tuning in. Whether you catch us live or you catch us on demand, you catching any one of these 43 episodes is important to us, and then your feedback is equally important so we can continue to improve the show before we put it out to the masses. Till then, you're listening to the Divided States of America show. I am your host, Marlon Gardenera. I'm enjoying this passion project. I'm enjoying the messages that I get to put out because I like to talk politics. I like to talk culture. I like to be humane, and I have my own shortcomings. Believe me, I do. But I have a goal of being better. And one of the things we could do in America to be better would be close the divide. You can only do a show called The Divided States of America if there are divisive issues left and right in a divided nation. And that's what. But wouldn't it be nice if we could make a difference? Thanks again for listening to the Divided States of America show. Come back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Divided States of America. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the channel and share this video with your family and friends.